All right, let's move to our next discussion now. The strike by the Academic Staff Union of Universities is in its 12th day today.
Well, a meeting between the union and the federal government ended in a deadlock on Thursday. The meeting, which lasted for about 5 hours, was meant to produce results that would put an end to the ongoing strike. The lecturers' union says the strike won't be called off until all demands are met by the federal government.
Now, both parties, however, agreed to resume talks next week to resolve the ongoing strike.
Okay, joining us to discuss this is the Pro-Chancellor of the University of Lagos and the Chairman, Federal Government Negotiation Team, ASUU, Dr. Wale Babalakin. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
It's great to have you join us today.
Same here. Thank you very much.
Okay, now, ASUU seems not to agree with your committee on the suggestions you're making about setting up an education bank. So tell us why the approach that you're tabling to ASUU.
I think the issues are clearer than the way they are being presented.
Okay.
I think it's important to understand the premise of our statements.
Okay.
Our position is clear. One, every Nigerian must have access to good quality education. Two, education must be properly funded. Three, Nigerian universities must regain their position in the Committee of Universities. Go back to the glorious years of education in Nigeria. ASUU presented a demand that, based on its assessment, you require $3,365 per student per year to fund education properly. Now, that position has been accepted by NUC, that's Nigerian Universities Commission, but it came from ASUU. If you add up the numbers, if you multiply the number of students by this amount, you will discover that you require about 2 trillion naira per annum to fund education. ASUU's position is that federal government or the government should fund this alone.
Okay.
Our position is simple. If the federal government can afford it, why not? But you have to look at the figures. The federal government budget last year was about 9 trillion, of which 2 trillion went to debt services and 1.5 trillion, according to the Minister of Finance, ASUU, was spent on capital projects. Let me remark, that's the highest spending ever in Nigeria. In 1 year, spending 1.5 trillion. What ASUU requires is that government should spend more than its disposable income on education alone. If government spent all it had based on the budget on education alone, there'll still be a shortfall. There'll still be a shortfall based on those figures.
Public university education.
Yes. Now, and there'll be no provision for security, no provision for health, no provision for infrastructure. But we accept very clearly that education must be funded. So, we said, let's all put on the thinking cap. Where do we find the resources? Okay. There is no point producing graduates that are not first rate. It's a waste of everybody's time. Secondly, ASUU says that government should allocate 26% of its
annual
budget to education. We don't like the fixation of a percentage. We say government should allocate what is required to fund education. If it requires more than that, allocate it. But don't go into a fixation about percentage. Why did we say that? This is a developing economy. Things go up and down. If you have such a fixation, when there is a low performance of the budget, you'll have a shortfall in education. As if we had foresight. Last year's budget was 9 trillion. This year is 8.5 trillion.
Yeah.
So if you had tied yourself to that fixed position, you'll have less amount to fund education. The problem with that is that you can't adjust easily if you have institutions to run. ASUU says, oh, the 26% came from UNESCO. At the beginning of our meetings, we stated clearly that what we want is accurate information and verifiable data. Don't come to us and just tell us things without backing it up. Till date, ASUU has not been able to produce the document where it is stated by UNESCO that you need to spend 26% on education.
Oh, so there is no prescription by the UNESCO like
There
that
is
anywhere?
none that we have seen. We can't lay claim to what we have not seen, but they've not managed to bring it to us. Let me also mention to you, the Minister of Education appointed a very, very strong negotiating team. ASUU's tried to portray things that Babalaki is the one driving the process.
Okay.
The members of this committee are the following. Professor Nimi Briggs. Professor Nimi Briggs is an exceptional medical scholar who was Vice-Chancellor of University of Port Harcourt and now Pro-Chancellor in Lokoja. Professor Olufemi Bamiro, an outstanding scholar in engineering, was Vice-Chancellor, University of Ibadan, is now Pro-Chancellor, Tai Shulari University. Mr. Muzeli Jubril, Professor Muzeli Jubril, outstanding scholar, former Executive Secretary of the National Universities Commission. Architect Lawrence Mbale, one of Nigeria's most distinguished architects, a very seasoned administrator and politician. That's the team. But ASUU would like you to believe that one Wale Babalaki is the one driving the process. The first release, when ASUU made these assertions, the team, our team, issued a statement. If I could pass it to you, I will.
Okay.
Issued a statement stating very clearly that whatever was being put forward by Dr. Babalaki was the joint position of all of us. This is the statement.
Okay.
But I have also managed to look at, I think it's, I'll read it out to you.
Yeah.
Contrary to the assertion by the union, the views communicated by the chairman of the committee, Dr. Wale Babalaki, are the collective views of the government renegotiation team. These views were arrived at after extensive debate and were communicated in writing in the inception report that was delivered to ASUU in July 2017. So trying to pin this to me is inaccurate. It is also a continuation of the narrative of trying to sell inaccurate information to Nigeria.
Yeah, we've had the national president of ASUU, Professor Ogunyemi, and he said that as far as the negotiating team is headed by Wale Babalaki, that they are not going to continue with negotiation. Now, from your own perspective,
Yes.
it seemed to be the person of Wale Babalaki. Why do you think they are uncomfortable with your chairmanship of the negotiating team?
I don't think that they are looking for a fall guy. Because really, whatever position I've expressed is a joint position. Not one member of our committee has dissented. Everybody has continued to emphasize that what we're saying is what we all agreed upon. I can't respond to fantasies. I can't respond to issues that are not backed by accurate information and data.
Okay. Okay, but then, as we're saying that, for the proposed education bank, you talked about, the students will have to get soft loans, and then that state government should put such scheme in place for them. As we're saying that, it's just a tactic by the government, and of course, by the committee led by you to somehow reintroduce tuition hike.
Again, you see, I'm happy about your questions because it enables us to elaborate. Let me start. We don't have a mandate to determine school fees. And when we made a response to ASUU, I'll read it out to you. We said, we did not know where ASUU got the figures that it has been peddling around the whole country from. However, the inconsistency in the figures are glaring. While Professor Lawan Abubakar, the ASUU zonal coordinator for Bauchi, stated in his article published in Pulse News on 3rd October 2018 that our committee had proposed 500,000 naira per annum as tuition fees to be paid by university undergraduates. The ASUU zonal coordinator for Ibadan, Dr. Adejumo, stated in the Punch newspapers on 3rd October 2018 that our committee was planning to impose tuition fees of 350,000 naira. Aside from the fact that our committee has no power to impose fees on students, we are at loss regarding the source of the said figures. However, the contradiction demonstrates clearly that the figures are incorrect and should not be countenanced by anybody. It is not us that is going to do it. And ASUU has also tried to tell the world that Education Bank is the idea of Dr. Wale Babalake. False narrative again. It was the National Council of Education that issued a statement that funding of education is so important and we should look at all sources, and said the idea of a student loan scheme and the idea of an education bank, the time has come for this to happen.
Which is operational in parts of the world,
yes,
even in developed countries.
Everywhere.
Right.
So I don't know why they think that we are the ones pushing it.
Okay.
All right. One other issue ASUU had and they complained about is the memorandum of action which the government signed, which they're supposed to have given about over R1 trillion naira to the education sector for a period of 6 years. And for each year, the government is supposed to release about 200 billion naira to the education sector. But after releasing 20 billion, they have never been committed to that process up until now. So when it comes to commitment, they say government hasn't been sincere.
Let me start. It's a very good question. Let me start my response by the minister's statement. Madam Adamu stated categorically that he is a man who takes his words very seriously. He will not sign any document that is not implementable. So he will not do that. Secondly, the issue you are raising is not part of our own mandate.
Okay.
It is something ASUU agreed with President Jonathan in form of an MOU. Well, I have not studied the MOU to even know whether...
But there were talks last year.
I don't even know what is in the... I don't know the state of the MOU. Because as a lawyer, I must talk very carefully. Maybe when I read the MOU, I'll be able to tell you whether there are issues with the MOU. But this, Malam Adamu has said he will not sign what is not implementable. The 200 billion per annum that President Jonathan promised, at the end of the day, he couldn't fund it. At the end of the day, he actually took that money from TED Fund. It wasn't a fresh injection into the education sector. So that is not on the table for us. And it's to prevent these sort of things that we are saying, let us have a source of funding that is ring-fenced against the vagaries of Nigerian economy, that protects everybody and education can be funded.
Okay.
Let me repeat. If the federal government could pay 3 trillion for education, why would we say no? But we're there to be realistic. We're there to be purposeful. and to turn education around.
So let's talk about, yes, what is on the table of your team and what you've been proposing, the student loan schemes. We understand that in repaying, students are to pay back not more than 10% of the loan, right, from their income once they get employed. And then ASUU is saying that for empathy, really, how many Nigerian graduates are employed? And what is the assurance that these students, once they graduate, would be gainfully employed? Many graduates excuse me, are getting 40,000, 30,000 naira as salary. So how do they now get to repay these loans? And we know this is what applies even in other foreign countries where humongous loans are bugging down on the necks of many people over there.
You see, it's a case of what comes first. Is this the chicken or the egg? Our thesis is simple. Our thesis is that quality education is the first step in getting proper employment. Quality education is the precursor to a larger economy. I will not sit down and take such a dead-end view about Nigeria. I believe this country has great potentials, and that what we have to do is increase our own commitment and thinking into the process. Why should you come here? I heard Oguyemi saying, oh, the students, they are going to, some of them have been committing suicide. Isn't that illogical? How many students have committed suicide? How many students have benefited from taking appropriate loans to go to school and they're whatever they are today? You don't blackmail people with things that have no backing in data. How many? Have you thought about it? Have you thought about it? There are so many jobs in this country today that are still being undertaken by expatriates. Those employing expatriates are not Father Christmas. They are doing it because they believe that that is their best source of human capital. When we turn around the education sector, that will collapse because there will be those properly trained to do the jobs, properly trained to enlarge the economy.
All right, talking about data just now,
Yes.
Nigeria is still a country without adequate or appropriate data to capture even those who are graduates, where they are, and all of that. If you're talking about giving loans to students who have, anyway, they get loans to school and then they graduate, assuming that when they get jobs, they'll pay back this loan
immediately
for a period of time, whether 5 years or 10 years or 2 years, as the case may be. In a situation where we don't have social security numbers of students and so on, how do we keep data? How do we trace anyone who is not able to pay back for a stipulated time?
You see, again, it comes to what we're saying.
All right.
We must continue to progress. 30 years ago, data may have been a challenge in Nigeria. Today, with the minimum effort, you'll have a comprehensive data. By the time you go through the banking system, the telephone system, the health insurance system, all the systems, and you have a commitment to have the data, you will have the data. 30 years ago, it's a different time. And why should we accept such a defeatist position that, oh, we don't have data, and because we don't have data, we cannot begin to do things that require data? We must make efforts to have the data. I don't think that's an issue.
Don't you think it could be an effort in futility if due diligence is not, made, machineries are not put in place for effective, implementation?
I will assume that if the concept is adopted, it will have to be done. It will be done in a very proper way. Remember, we're at the stage of which we're engaging in ideas. Anybody who has an idea cannot say that his ideas have worked until he has an implementation strategy for the idea. So That's very important.
Okay. Now, there was a meeting yesterday. We haven't known the outcome of the meeting yesterday, but we understand it wasn't conclusive between ASUU and the government. What would it take for ASUU, your team, with the government coming together to say, okay, we are agreeing? Because there certainly has to be a shifting of grounds for ASUU to go back to the classroom and for the system to work.
We have never refused to negotiate. We remain open for negotiation. We've been available for negotiations. We have no no-go areas. We say that everything is on the table. ASUU is the union with no-go areas. We don't have any no-go areas. We're ready to resume negotiation tomorrow.
And shift grounds?
There is no, what have I said that you find unacceptable? What have we asked for?
Well, ASUU has its own issue, because when we spoke with the president here, and they reeled out some of their grievances and what government hasn't done, any average person could say, well, ASUU is on track and all of that. You are here, you've told us certainly, and they're very logical, they're very tactical, as the case may be. So if both sides, like the ASUU president was saying, ASUU is a makeup of intellectuals. No one is going to disagree with that, one way or the other. But these two sides coming to agree for the system is what we are talking about.
We are open. We didn't boycott talks. The institution to appeal to is ASUU. We are ready to be on the table. Another issue that we have insisted on, which ASUU finds unacceptable, is that we said, if we persuade government to increase funding in education, then there must be a way of measuring the performance of the funding.
Okay.
If we say to you today that, okay, University of Ibadan, once upon a time, you were comparable to University of London. If we give you the resources, when are you going to be at the level of University of London?
But you wonder why the government didn't put such a measure in place in the first place to monitor every amount it had released.
ASUU says no. ASUU says no. ASUU says that suggestion is the manifestation of liberal capitalist tendencies that has been sent down by the World Bank, by Bretton Woods. You find it so clear. Why should government give money without measuring performance? ASUU says no. It's one of the no-go areas of ASUU.
Okay, so they want government to release the money and forget it, and they can handle it.
Which means continue the bonanza.
Okay, we are rounding off now, but for emphasis,
yes,
we know that if you Google it on the internet, there are so many write-ups going back to the issue of UNESCO says that 26% of budgetary allocation for any country should be given to education.
Yeah.
For emphasis, you're saying there's no report like that?
We have not seen it. As an intellectual, I must not assert beyond what I can prove. We've asked ASUU for the document. We have not seen it. And a few of us that have been to UNESCO have told us that, look, UNESCO emphasizes the need to fund education, but there is no such
recommendation.
But of course, if they bring it up to us, I'll be the first to say, I withdraw my statement. But I have not been trained to accept platitudinous generalizations and statements that are not backed with facts and data.
Okay.
We are willing to sit down with ASUU. I wish you had even invited ASUU here. I will tell them these things and let them challenge one thing I've said. Let them challenge one thing I've said based on information and data. They are my people. We are all in this field. We all want to create a first-class institution. I went to University of Lagos for a first degree. I have a fair idea of what university education was when I was there. And it's important to try and start getting back to such standards. We must put an end to not advancing in education. We cannot afford it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We have to leave you here now. Dr. Wale Babalakin, the chairman of the federal government negotiating team with ASUU. Thank you very much for coming.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.